such a beauty. Oh, I've never seen one as big as that before. Ooh, what's a what, man? It must be 18 inches long or more. It's such a lovely colour. It's nice and round and fat. Whoever thought a marrow could grow as big as that?
Welcome back to Geeks and Grounds, a monthly game club and weekly podcast where we play games and brew good conversation together. I'm your host, Jenny Wyndham.
And I'm Joel Thomas.
And I'm ready to just slap everything. Engage with, to pick up, to just, I'm slapping everything.
Thank goodness you said that, because I was wondering about slapping things as well. And I want to slap trash cans. I want to slap people. I want to slap birds. I want to slap cows. I want to just
garbage.
Slap.
Just let me slap. So today is our discussion of Thank Goodness You're Here, a bite-sized game, a bite-sized comedic adventure game. And this is a little bit of a one-shot situation. Normally we like to delve into games a bit more long-term, but because we have this awkward time frame between Firewatch, which was a pretty short game as well, and the next month, we thought, hey, instead of taking 2 weeks off, why don't we do just one little fun game, take 1 week off, and we'll be ready for September, which is our month for Night in the Woods, which is going to be a great in-depth discussion. I'm very excited for that. But this is like our primer, because I think Night in the Woods is going to lean a bit more serious conversation, and this was our silly slapdash, slapfest,
slapstick.
Yeah, I'm like
Usher's Thunderclap from 2004's Yeah. Lots of slapping, clapping. We're moving, baby.
Yes. For folks who are new, in addition to talking about the game that we're playing together as a community each month, you can listen to this podcast, but you can also join in the discussion in Discord. You can sign up to the newsletter, which is a weekly newsletter, and all of this is available at geeksandgrounds.com. That is your home base for finding out everything in this little digital space virtual cafe that we're hosting. I told you I was going to get water before this. I got coffee. I actually was like, it's on theme. So
I too got coffee. After a long... Oh, there's a little elephant on mine. Do you have cats on your mug?
I do. Oh, that's cute.
I've never seen this before. It must be a new stamp. Love it.
But yes, it is the afternoon, but it doesn't matter. We're going to drink coffee because we're adults and you can't tell us what to do.
Don't stop. I wish our podcast community would stop trying to get me to stop drinking coffee. I feel like, get off my lawn. Let me drink my coffee at 8 p.m. I want it.
Yeah. Everyone, stop caring about our health.
Get off my lawn is what I'm saying. Okay.
Before we talk about this week's brew, this week's game, we always like to stop by the pastry case for a little bit of a grab bag of topics. Sometimes we do industry news and events. And we also like to talk about what else we're reading, watching, playing outside of the community selection. This week, I really have only been playing Fields of Mystria. I am obsessed. The game is so good. I have no notes other than more, please. Please, sir, may I have some more? I am just obsessed with this farming sim, and I love it ever so much. Actually, I do have like minor notes, very nitpicky notes, but I think there are things like I think my biggest feedback for Fields of Mystria, my biggest wish, two of them. First is inventory management. I love that wherever you are on your farm, any item you put in your inventory is drawn into sort of this universal inventory that you can craft from. That's wonderful. But sorting your inventory currently, not great. And I would love to be able to sort more easily because I have a lot of stuff right now. And I would love to be able to decorate some of the areas adjacent to the village, not just my farm. And I know this could potentially make things a little messy. I know why they probably aren't going to do it / haven't done it. But it would be so nice because there are little pockets by the village where I'm just like, if I could just put down like a couple of benches and a picnic blanket, that would just make the village so cute. So I think those are the two things I find myself wanting the most, but it's so good.
So I had this same issue with inventory management with this. It's like a smaller game though. It's called Elden Ring, and literally
Oh,
it
I don't
wasn't.
know if I've heard of
Yeah,
that.
I'm
Sorry.
pretty like unique in that I play this
Mhm.
game. Literally, I have now been playing it for over a year and just learned how to resort my items in the last 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh, what a game changer.
So I totally resonate with like being able to sort and manage your inventory as such a like important quality of life thing. And maybe in a later fields patch they'll make some things better for you. But I mean, if that's your primary complaint, like that and being able to like decorate the town, that's a pretty good sign.
Yeah, those two being probably the two most like maybe mechanical complaints I have. Like again, very, very small notes, but across the board, it is probably one of the most frictionless experience. Like I think if I were ever to recommend someone a farming sim, it would probably be Fields of Mystria, because Fields of Mystria or Wildflowers, simply because Fields of Mystria does so many quality of life things that
Mm.
made it hard for me to recommend sometimes Stardew Valley to folks, where I'd be like, Stardew Valley's great, but like you kind of have to be into games or familiar with games to be able to pick up on a lot of the stuff that they
Mhm.
put down. And I think Fields of Mystria makes certain choices that are much more accessible to people who are perhaps new to the genre. So, it's great. I'm obsessed. And according to their plans, we are going to have another content update before the year is out, and we're going to be able to romance people up to 6 hearts. We can only romance up to 4
Oh.
now. So no marriage yet, but we're getting close. So I'm I'm really excited.
Who are you romancing?
I am romancing a character named March. They're all hot. This is like a Coral Island thing, where if you played Coral Island, another farming sim, everyone in that game was hot. Fortunately, everyone in this game is hot. March to me is, I could not think of the word, so thank you to the folks who commented and put in Discord the word tsundere trope, where he's like, I hate you, and he's like so mean to you, but he's super
Uh,
soft on the inside. I love that. I love character, like real life, not a great thing. Real life, you don't want someone who treats you like that. But in video game world, in fictional worlds, give me all of that energy. So I love him.
it's like
If
the book talk thing where it's like husbands
yeah.
that try to use like language from their wives' favorite books in real life, and it's like, oh no, no, no,
Yeah,
no,
no,
no.
don't do it. Yeah, it's so funny. So, which I think would be kind of interesting to explore, like the ways, it's the whole thing about fantasy and fiction versus, living out fantasies versus real life. I think it's super interesting. But yeah, in real life, he would be like red flags. Ooh, I don't know. In video game world, I'm like, I know I can fix him, because this is a world in which these characters are all going to be fixable.
You can
So
fix things.
yeah, I can fix things in this. And so he is my current like number one bias. He also reminds me of Ryoga from Ranma One Half. Did you ever watch that show?
No.
It's getting a reboot, so I am very excited for you to watch Ranma One Half
Okay.
when it comes out. Um, Ranma One Half is an old anime. This very loose summary is a martial artist and his father fall into a cursed hot spring, where every time, I believe it's when when cold water touches him, he will turn into a girl, and his dad turns into this giant panda. When hot water touches him, he turns back, and something like that. I forget. It might be reversed. Lots of shenanigans, really fun. And the character Ryoga, who is also cursed and turns into a pig when the appropriate temperature water touches him, he was one of my favorite characters. And I think March reminds me of Ryoga.
Mm.
So that also, it's like channeling a 90s seminal memory for me as a kid.
It's very, very fun. I, you know,
Yeah.
I love a hot tub mismatch, mash 'em up experience.
Yeah. And yeah, and the last thing I wanted to share that I I watched was Philosophy Tube's How Death Changes Your Perspective. Definitely a heavier watch. Philosophy
Mm.
Tube is just a really great creator. I love all of her videos when they come out. They're super thought provoking, making philosophy really accessible to people, and just gets me thinking about things and encourages me to look at different resources, because she does a great job of citing her resources so that if you're curious, you can like go and find them yourself and read a bit more. And this one was a great video on how we approach the topic of death as individuals and how we prepare for it, and how as a society we also look at death and how it impacts our ability to respond to things like COVID-19 and the genocide in Gaza and climate change. And so it was a really great breadth of content that she was able to sort of fit into this one hour video, where it's like super personal, but then she was able to scale it out in a really, really interesting way. So highly recommend if you need something to watch.
That sounds really good. We're really bad at that, at least in the American U.S. culture. Like, someone in our community today just posted a thing about the CDC posted this like joke meme about COVID-19, like waiting like for school years to start and things like that. And it's like pretty terrible joke from an organization that has the ability to do something about how ignored this is and how many people are contracting this disease right now. Like, so that sounds like something I'd really be into, is kind of like some different reflections on death and like how that influences how we see the world. Sounds really cool.
Yeah. But what have you been getting into this week?
Well, not to brag, but I moved and needed to like sell some books and buy some books, and I sold 4 boxes of books and purchased another box of books. I think I made $210 on selling books and spent $220 on new books. So I am
math.
loaded.
You broke even. It's good. Yeah.
I broke even, but I got some good stuff. And like, one of the things, I did not know this was out, but I started The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman, who wrote the Magician series, which I'm a huge fan of. And it's kind of like an Arthurian retelling moment. So I've just started that. So far, really enjoying the style. I'll give you all an update how I feel after we finish it. And I'm going to give you all a thing I do and don't recommend. So what I don't recommend, I tried the Rick and Morty anime that HBO just dropped, and it was bad. It was bad in like every way that I can measure the badness of this show. For me, it checked every one of those boxes. So I just simply would not recommend. If you enjoy it, like, no shade, whatever. I hope you continue to enjoy it. But for me, it's a no. And then on the other end of the spectrum, they did a Suicide Squad isekai, like an anime version of Suicide Squad. Yeah. And I think it's super fun. It's like your DC heroes in this fantastical like fantasy realm. And I think it's a great like anime adaptation of like an American superhero franchise. So would recommend this one.
I love, like, isekai is like one of my favorite, just, would you call it like a trope or like sort of mechanic? It's
like a genre at this point.
Yeah. I would, that's really interesting. So it's not someone going into the Suicide Squad world. It's the Suicide Squad going into a fantasy world.
Exactly. Yeah. And you get all the great like anime tropes like isekai anime tropes as a part of it. And it was a really like part of the thing with like American superheroes is that like their powers and things get very like repetitive. It's like, I've been seeing the same guy do the same thing for 80 years now. And so like, it's kind of it reimagines like, oh, now that they're in this world, kind of like their powers and like their attitudes shift because of that. And it's like a really like fresh take in a way that I think is really fun. So yeah, if you're into like superheroes, if you're into anime, like I think it's a really good cross section.
This is intriguing me. I'm going to give it a shot. As someone who historically has bounced off of superhero things, I'm hoping my goal in life is to find a superhero thing that sticks. Cause it's like the idea around superheroes and sort of the lore and all of that really, I think, interests me and excites me, but then whenever I watch an actual superhero movie or show, it just never seems to quite deliver on what I think I'm going to get. So I'm hoping maybe this one will do it, because this looks really fun.
And I'll say, like, this is like their second pass at this. Like, DC did a thing like a year or two ago where they combined like their Justice League characters with, I'm gonna get this wrong, it's like RGWY.
Oh,
It's like an older anime.
Yep.
Like one of the early like CG anime. And it, like, the premise is like the Justice League gets isekai'd into their world, and they're like teenagers, and it was okay. It was a little like childish or whatever, so like I didn't love it, but like I feel like with this they've caught on to something in a really cool way.
Awesome. Very neat. Is it done already?
At least the first season is, I think. Yeah, on HBO.
Awesome. Oh, it's on HBO. Perfect.
Also on HBO. Yep.
Sweet. Oh, I also started watching Sunny after you mentioned it last week.
And
P.S.
Are you intrigued?
I am intrigued. I think it's really interesting because so for folks who maybe missed it or need a reminder, Sunny is a show on HBO that stars, what's her name, Rashida Jones? Yep. And she plays a grieving mother who is gifted this really super smart robot with AI that like makes it almost human. You know, it's like acting like a human. It's learning. It's talking with her. It's got memories that it's sort of like accessing, and it's a mystery about, there are so many mysteries. Like part of it is going through the grieving process, and that's just like a core emotional component, but the mysteries are around like, where does this robot come from? What was her husband up to? Like so many things. Was the accident that killed him and her son actually something orchestrated by a different group, or did he actually die? We don't know, or I don't, at least at the point I'm at. I'm only like 2 episodes in. Really liking it. I think it's interesting seeing her. I think I'm so used to seeing her play very upbeat characters. So I think one of the most jarring things is having this actor play someone so fatigued and beaten down and sad. And she does an amazing job. And I'm just excited to watch more. I'm trying to savor it. I'm trying to do like 1 episode a night, you know, That's episode every other night to try and like spread it out, because there are only 8, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so far, really liking it. I have a lot of questions, and that makes me happy, because that means we love a lot of questions. We love a lot of mystery. So yeah.
I will say, I think it's maybe like episode 4 or 5. She has an emotional beat that is so strong and powerful that like the show kind of flirts with different tones. Like there are moments that are really funny and really cutesy and really like you're on the edge of your seat and it's like dramatic. And there is a moment that it's like you're dealing with things that are like kind of lighthearted for a bit, and then something like really extreme happens. And the way she takes over that scene when she has this like very emotional experience is incredible. And I think I'm on like episode 5 or something like that. I think I've cracked open the case. I have got some really strong theories right now about what's going on. And I feel like once I have my theories in place, I'm in. Like, you're not getting rid of me now.
Yeah. I'm excited to get more information, because I feel like I have a lot of things that I'm sort of grasping at and guesses, but because I'm so early on, it's like I don't have enough information yet. But yeah, I'm really excited. And it is fun how it actually is it's funnier than I thought it would be, in sort of this dark comedy way.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, at least some of these early episodes when you're meeting her and you're kind of getting adjusted to the scenario of her being like, this robot that I hate is living with me. There's some pretty great moments there too.
I think you have nailed it for sure.
Sweet. Well, just to wind down the pastry case, notable game releases for this week. We've got 4 I wanted to highlight. If you want to get a little bit more info about them, as well as the links to just check out their store pages, make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter. But we've got Dustborn. This is also the week of the 20th through like the 27th. Dustborn is releasing on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Mika and the Witch's Mountain is coming out on the 21st on Switch and PC. Crypt Custodian, which I'm so excited
Oh,
for.
that game was so fun.
It was so good. Crypt Custodian's coming out on the 27th on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. And Core Keeper is coming out of early access. It's their 1.0 launch on the 27th as well on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. All right. So yeah, visit geeksandgrounds.com. It's got all the email, all the info. If you have any feedback, questions, or you want to share any additional thoughts on what we talked about here. All right. It's time.
Thunderslap, hey, Thunderslap, hey, Thunderslap, hey. Thank goodness you're here, Jenny.
Thank goodness you're here, Joel. I feel like, where to even start with this game? I guess let's highlight the developer, Cole Supper, the publisher, Panic, which is based in Portland. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So yeah, Panic is of Firewatch fame. For those of you who played our earlier title this month, they published Firewatch. Panic also published Untitled Goose Game, which is a personal favorite of mine, with the little underdog goose causing mischief and mayhem in a English town. So I think a similar, I guess, maybe setting. I don't know about the energy. The energy is very different in this game.
I haven't played the Goose Game. The energy in this game was interesting. So
yeah, I think the Goose Game is interesting because it's a goose who's causing mischief and mayhem in this town, whereas you are helping. But I think it's
maybe also causing mischief and mayhem.
Causing mischief and mayhem as you're helping. The goose is much more unabashedly not helping. So,
yeah. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and I think the art style for this is quite interesting because it gives me, again, kind of Adult Swim, early Nickelodeon vibes.
For sure.
For sure. It's incredibly polished, but you have a lot of super bright colors, very cartoony style, and very just I think overly expressive characters and sounds, which isn't a visual, but the sounds are definitely there.
Yeah, it's definitely the vibe of if someone were to take Ren and Stimpy and redo the animation using today's HD technology and turned it into a video game. That is the stylistic experience that you're getting. How do we describe the actual play of this game?
Okay, so here, let's start with the Steam description. I think this will give us a nice baseline.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Thank Goodness You're Here is an absurd comedy slapformer set in the bizarre northern English town of Barnsworth. As a traveling salesman, take the time to see the sights and meet the locals who are very eager to give you a series of increasingly odd jobs. It came out August 1st, so just this month it came out. And I will say right now on Steam, it is overwhelmingly positive in terms of the rating it has, which is huge. Overwhelmingly positive is 10 out of 10, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it has almost 2,000 Steam reviews. So it's doing really well for an indie. Normally it takes a little longer for indies to get to that overwhelmingly positive state. So really congratulations to the team. Did an amazing job. There's a lot of positive reception going around for this game.
So Jenny, you said something earlier that I thought was interesting. You compared it to your favorite game, Link's Awakening. You said you liked it just as much and it was the same type of experience. And so 10 out of 10, right? Wasn't that, did I mishear you?
Not at all. No, we'll talk a little bit more about final thoughts on the game. I will say this plays more so it's not at all like a Link's Awakening. This is definitely an adventure game where you walk around, you have basically chores, favors, requests that you have to get answered, and then you go and find the object to make it happen, or the person who has the thing to make it happen. So it's very adventure game formatty.
Yeah, like Link's Awakening. I feel you.
Sure.
We're saying the same thing.
Yeah, totally. What I think is really cool is the level of detail in this the environments in this game are pretty incredible. Like as you're walking around, the only thing you have is walk, you can jump, and you can slap. And slapping is basically how you engage with the world. It's how you talk to people. Like you can't just talk to them. You slap them and they make noise. And sometimes the noise is conversation, and sometimes the noise is just them being like, ow.
Yep, absolutely. It's funny that they describe it as increasingly absurd tasks, because I believe your first task is that there's a man whose arm is stuck in a grate who needs butter to slather on his arm to get out. And I think that is a consistent tone throughout the game.
I think that's situationally, I was like, I could be like, I could imagine seeing something like you've seen, I don't know. I've seen situations where people are got their arms stuck in something. So I'm like, that's fine. The butter made sense, but I do think it does get increasingly unhinged as you go. Do we want to start walking through it like maybe, what is it, in order, I guess? Or do you have highlights that you wanted to point out first?
I guess like one of the things that's interesting, like just kind of starting at the very beginning, is you open, like the screen begins with like a question about like if you're ready to proceed. And from the language that they use, are you from Tarn? It's like Northern English accent. And they like very clearly pride themselves on that. Like that is a critical like theme and motif of the game. So from the opening, you get questions that are written in this accent. All of the dialogue has this Northern English accent. And it like, I will say like, regardless of anything else, like in terms of like, this is a love letter or like an appreciation for this specific kind of cultural timepiece, I think that is something that I have a lot of respect for. Like maybe it's poking fun at it a little bit, but like it feels like it's almost made for that particular group of people to especially enjoy. And from the opening scene, they're letting you know that.
Yeah, I agree. I think this team is they're definitely from the UK. This is a team that definitely created this as a love letter to the specific like geographic region and the people who live there. And what I think is really cool is we've talked a lot about specificity just in general with games, like especially Venba. I think that was one of the conversations that we had where I was like, Venba is incredible because this is made for a very specific group of people, and a specific group will understand exactly what this is. And I think everyone can appreciate it, but like there's going to be a group of people who appreciate this in a very special way because they are connected to this very specific experience. I think this game is another example of that in a really cool way. I think this game is also neat because we don't get a lot of comedies in games. We get a lot of games that incorporate comedic elements, but to have a game that's like, no, this is entirely a comedic experience, I will admit, I'm like, that's ambitious because comedy is so specific. I think also if you find it funny, it's going to be a hit for you.
Yeah.
If you don't find it funny, the whole game is going to fall flat. Which I think as we get into thoughts about the game, I think it was hit or miss for me. I think certain elements really I thought were great. And then there were certain jokes where I was just like, not my cup of tea.
Okay.
Yeah. There was a lot of, I think, more like, I think a lot of like more grotesque. I don't like humor that goes into the grotesque. And there's a lot of phallic stuff that I was just kind of like,
so many dick jokes. So many. Yeah, dick
I was
jokes.
just like, one, maybe two is fine, but I think they leaned on it more in a way that wasn't to my personal taste. They did do repetition in some really fun ways.
Agreed.
They did some Metroidvania stuff that I thought was really cool in terms of areas and progression and revisiting. But I think there was a lot of like highs and lows for me in this game.
So maybe I'll just do like a very high level flyover of like the events of the game, and then we can kind of cement back in like the experiences within that. Does that make sense? So you're a salesman. You kind of have this yellow lemon head. You're a very small person, and the scale of your person changes depending on where you are in the environment, which I think is one of the more fun things that they play with.
Yes.
But your boss essentially says, like, you got to go talk to this mayor. And what I ended up doing was jumping out of the window and going to find the mayor. Mayor doesn't have time for you. And so you are going to fill your time by meeting the people of this town. They're going to ask you for favors and ask you to do things for them. Thank goodness you're here. Like, it's kind of the starting point of each of those conversations or some take on that. So some big things would be like this opening sequence where you have a man whose arm is stuck in the grate and you need to get butter. You have a person that like needs help mowing the lawn. And you like in between each of these things, there's moments, like very small moments that are like kind of that dry, like, I think it's like a British humor kind of thing. It's like, oh, I'm mowing the lawn in the background and you can see me getting closer and closer to these two talking flowers that are just like laid back saying how much they love each other. So like tonally, as you're doing a task, you're going to go across a million, like some subtle, some very not subtle jokes in the environment. You mentioned the Metroidvania part, which I think is like one of the smartest things about this game. I think there are probably like 6, maybe 7 areas of the map. And the way you navigate from area to area is so obtuse. Like, you go about it in the strangest way. Like, to get to one part of the map, you have to get sucked down a drain that's going to take you through the underbelly of the city, and then you're going to pop out of a sink. To get to another part, you're going to go down a chimney and end up in a person's living room and then jump out their window. So like, it's asymmetrical. The way you get from part to part of the map is gonna be not linear in any way. And at various points, I will also give the game this credit, like the way you navigate or the way you continue this part of the story or solve this task requires that you leave the part of the map in a new way. And so they'll close off the old way in some like usually funny way. And you have to do that. So what I will say is, like, moving from piece to piece in this game, I thought was one of the more interesting elements, like that Metroidvania style. Like, you can't do this until you've found this person who lives in a dumpster who has 6 seagulls, and you have to go slap the seagulls to make them return home. Like, that type of asymmetrical thinking I thought was very fun. And then, like, as you move through, eventually you complete all of your tasks and you get to go back to the mayor, who, after like kind of a funny song, says, "Thank goodness you're here," and is clear is about to ask you for another favor. So like, generally, like, that's the plotting of the game. Within that, like, what were the beats that like stood out to you, like the more memorable experiences?
I think one of the more memorable experiences, I mean, one of the first ones is when you first hop into, basically you're at the pub and you basically get into sort of the tap somehow, or I think you hop into the barrel or the keg and you come up through and you transform into sort of the size of the bubbles, the carbonation bubbles. And then you come up through and then you come out of the tap. And I think that for me was one of the first moments where I was like, okay, this is going to do something a little bit different, a little bit fun with scale. And I love when games play with that sense of scale and size. And so I think seeing all of the different moments when your character usually is shrunk down even further. I don't think there are very many instances where you got super big, if any, but you are usually shrunk down to the size of like the carbonation bubbles, or you're sort of these like little microscopic size of a rat, or not microscopic, but you're like the size of a rat and you're like running through the grocery store. You never get up to human sort of height, you're
which like
is really
knee high is about the tallest you get. I'd say, something like that.
So for anyone actually filling out their Geeks and Grounds bingo card, this would be perfect for the little lad section. So throw back to that. But I think
Yeah.
Mostly, I was just always excited to see what was next. This game kept me on my toes in a way that was really fun because even though we're walking through a village and I'm like, oh, we're going to the grocery store, we're going to this person's house, or we're walking around a yard, it was neat because these were all very familiar locations, but because of the cultural like sort of bend that this had, where it was like very obviously these signs, they all had these like alliterations, which I was talking to a friend and it's like, no, that's actually kind of a joke because that's sort of a thing that happens in at least in specific parts of Europe, at least, where they're like, no, we always like to have an alliteration for the sign. That's like a joke that they're playing on. So it's like these familiar spaces that are made different because culturally they are different, but also different because they are so absurd. I have no idea what's going to happen next. Like we jump into a well, we're somehow underground, we come up, we're like in a different building. Like it's so weird. We end up in the ice. What is it? The ice chest with the fish.
Where the fish are. And if you slap the fish, they like cigarettes or cigars come out of their mouth.
Yeah. And I was like, this is absolutely a reference to something. I don't know what it is. I kind of love that. And so there are things that I found comical despite my lack of like cultural context for what it meant.
I totally agree with that. Like one of the things that I thought was really funny. So there's a part where you like, if you just walk around and slap things, you are destroying this town. And like, that's kind of some of the fun, is to see how things break when you slap them. At one point you go into a store, you can slap and break all of the food, and that eventually creates rats. And then you have to get rat poison, and the rats are stealing things, and you have to go into the rat home. And in the rat home, where you've shrunk down even smaller, you have like a church. There are propaganda posters that say things like, biggies are not people, and it's like an image of a human, and it's like that human is not a person, or leave no bin bag unchewed. Like it's these like almost like the keep calm and carry on propaganda posters, but like for rats. And then eventually you go back to the store and the rats are literally running the store. They have like name tags on, and like that for me was when the humor worked best, when like there's a subtle progression happening every time you complete one of these like Metroidvania loops, and it's like subtle. Like there was a woman who was upset because a neighbor was throwing his trash away in her bin. And it's like every time you looped around, like something had progressed until the two of them are both inside of the bin together. And it's just like, I thought that was really fun, like a clever little like, oh, I'm interested to see how this has progressed.
Yep. Same.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, one of my favorite bits, the one that I kept being like, I need this to happen, was when you're like going through the pipes, you have one scene where you're like going underneath a house that has a dish cabinet, and it has a beautiful dish that every time you go under it, it bumps closer to the edge of the cabinet. And I was like, this thing has to fall. It has to fall. And that ability in this game, like you said, to repeat and lean in and progress some of these bits, I think I agree. Absolutely some of the strongest writing and moments in the game, for sure. So I just had to share that because I
totally agree with that. And then like it's I think Lady Diana is on the plate or something. Then after it crashes, like a young woman comes in, like, Lady D.
Yep.
It's very, very funny. They also do an interesting thing, like merging different mediums. So sometimes you'll get like a clip of like a real life, like an old school 1970s like camera going down a real English street, and they'll like fold that in. Or you'll finish like a mini quest and you'll get like an extended like 2-minute long video of what actually happened after. Like there's one guy that's really insecure about the size of his head, and like you cause problems for him, and then eventually like you resolve what you need, and then you get this like long existential crisis about this person from childhood through his current day and all the problems that he had like getting made fun of for the size of his head.
Yeah.
Like that I thought was a very clever way to like break up what otherwise would have maybe felt a little monotonous, like just running around and doing, like, I do think it still felt a little monotonous at times, like doing all these tasks, but I don't know, like it was interesting that they were able to break it up that way, and I think that helped.
Yeah, I completely agree. Um, I also wanted to take a moment and play a voicemail that we got. I was super excited because we set up this voicemail. I highly would love to encourage everybody to, as we talk about games, especially next month with Night in the Woods, if you've got little bits of thoughts, they don't have to be huge, long things, just something that you enjoyed about a game or something that made you think or a question you had. Please feel free to put in the voicemail and send it to us so we can play it during the show. It's always really fun to hear from you all and not have just us be, the voices here. But I wanted to play this from Greg, Pixelated Soul, on some of the things that Greg enjoyed most.
Hi, this is Greg, aka Pixelated Soul. One of the best things that this game does, I feel, is when you progress and it kicks you back to an earlier part of the game. You have to work your way back to get to a newer area, but in doing so, you're forced to meet up with all the characters you've previously met before. This leads to a lot of hilarious moments. One of my favorites is when you have to jump down that guy's chimney 3, 4, 5, 6 times throughout the game, and every time it's just a bigger, more traumatic event, having to clean up the soot and the ash that you leave in his living room, and it's hilarious every single time.
So thanks to Pixelated for hopping in and giving us our first voicemail to throw into the show. We really appreciate that. Please do join in. But it absolutely referenced what I also thought was perhaps the funniest moment of that game.
Yes.
Like coming out of that chimney and like the single tear of the guy sitting on the chair is like, we have yet again added soot all over his very pristine home. I thought that was very funny. Like that kind of sad sack funny humor. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think humor is really interesting because playing this game because there were moments where I was like, that's really funny. I think this is humorous. And then there were moments where I was like, that's not funny to me. There were like, I think there was one moment, and it is a recurring bit, but like, basically you can like slap this one service worker in the butt and like they don't like it and they close up shop, and I was like, I don't like this. Like that's not funny to me personally. And there were a couple other bits that also were not humorous, and this got me really thinking about what am I finding funny and why. And I think this idea of repetition, when it's also like not actually harmful, for me, super funny. Like breaking a dish, that's funny. Making someone's living room totally messy, having them anxiously wait because they just know it's going to happen again.
Yep.
Hilarious. And there were just, I think, I said, I think at the top of the podcast, I'm not a huge fan of like bodily function humor. I just don't like it personally. And there was a lot of like bodily function stuff that was like, not really to my taste.
There was a whole scene where a guy just wants milk for his tea.
Yes.
And it ended up leading to a massive ejaculation joke. And it just went on and on and on.
Too far, too much. I didn't like it.
So milk shy no more. Like so much. But then there were like moments that were like they had a really quippy, funny, small exchange. Like there's a guy who is standing, like he opens up his shop and he's selling bricks. And so like the ship, it's literally a brick wall. But then if you slap the brick wall, it breaks and his sign changes to like used furniture or something like that. And it's like a person who was behind the bricks the whole time, just like in their living room watching TV. Like small, quick, and very funny. Like I thought that was great.
Yeah. And I think this got me, I put in the newsletter last week and I'll include some more stuff this week, but it's interesting because there is, I think, this also cultural difference in sort of comedy where I feel like, and I've been reading about it and I am no expert whatsoever, but in reading and also talking to some of my friends who live in the UK, they mention how like a lot of more like raunchy humor and like that kind of humor is much more readily accepted than in the US. And like humor that sort of ends in tragedy and stays in tragedy versus humor that maybe ends with like a little bit of an upswing, like tragedy is much more British versus like stuff with a little bit of an upswing is a bit more American, according to some of the friends that I chatted with. So it's interesting thinking about what they found funny.
I think that's totally true. And it's almost like, in some ways, like the Family Guy era of comedy for like our generation, it felt like it was approaching some of that like bodily function, scatological humor, like blue humor, whatever. And then it's almost like there was like a shift back. Like we want things that are a little bit more wholesome or something. I don't know. But I was able to pick on certainly a few references within the game to like well-established British tropes, like the running between doorways. Like you're just looking at a long hallway and you run through one door and then suddenly you're like on a different floor running across the other direction. And like I think it's Benny Hill like type of humor. Like it was fun seeing those call outs and references. It felt very of the time because you're clearly in like that 1970s, 1980s, like British town.
Yes.
So I think that makes a lot of sense that they would be able to pull in some of those references. It was just like, so we haven't said this. Matthew Barry is a voice in the game, and I love Matthew Barry. I think he cracks me up. His voices, his timing, like so good. And he had one of the worst running gags, in my opinion, in the whole game, where it's like he's a gardener trying to, quote, unknot his hose. And it was like, how many times can we make sure that people understand that this hose is, in fact, a penis? And like at one point, he's trying to like open a bag of fertilizer, but the way he's opening it from the silhouette looks like he's humping it. And it's just like, I get it. Like we're revisiting a not funny thing again. And it's like not funny to me. I will clarify, apologies. But like, it felt like such a waste. I was like, come on, give Matthew Barry give him something funny, damn it. It makes me upset.
I know. I was going to ask you like how you felt, because I know when we talked about the game earlier and I was like, oh, and Matt Barry is one of the voice actors, you were like, that should have been the leading thing. And I had a feeling, depending, like just from the trailer and everything, I was like, I don't want to lead with that because I feel like it sets up a specific level of expectation for the humor. Because I think my familiarity with Matt Barry primarily is from what is it? What Remains in the Shadows?
Oh, What We Do in the Shadows.
What We Do in the Shadows, which is my kind of humor, like awkward situations, generally kind-hearted people, just sort of being silly and like misunderstanding. Like that's my personal kind of humor. And I had a feeling that this would not be that. And I was like, I don't know if your experience lined up with Matt Barry being from that or like other things, but I was like, I bet you this is going to be different than what we think he's going to do. Which is why I didn't lead with him.
It was wise. I appreciate you trying to guard and protect my heart. No, I think I got interested in him from with the IT Crowd. And then there was another show where he's like an aging actor and the name of it is escaping me. And he's trying to like revitalize his career or something.
Yeah.
No. The first thing that I saw him in was Darth Marenghi's Dark Place, which made it to Adult Swim. It was like a British humor show that made it to Adult Swim back when we were in college. And that show is still like, it just has a direct pipeline to my funny bone. And he plays Dr. Rick Douglas, or no, maybe he doesn't. Irregardless, he's very funny in it. And it's just like, it's just a warm place in my heart when I know his voice is going to be heard. And it was like, I was so, I think he did a few different voices, but like his running gag was so frustratingly disappointing.
Yeah, I think, and again, it's one of those things where I'm sure there is an audience. Obviously, it's overwhelmingly positive on Steve. There's an audience for this. I think for me, by the end of the day, I was like, I think this was the perfect like one-shot game for me. I was like, I had a really good time playing it. Let me clarify. I had a good time playing it when I was like in sync with the jokes. There were moments that I agree. I think it went too long. Some of the jokes were just not my taste personally. And so it was a perfect one-shot game of like, I don't need it to be life-changing 10 out of 10. I come out of it with a different way of thinking about my place in the world. I'm like, I just wanted it to be a silly little game, and it was, and that's wonderful.
Jenny, did you not write several pages in your notebook about how this subverts Citizen Sleeper's transactional relationship trope? Because I wrote a whole treatise on that.
I ended up writing a treatise on 1,000 Times Resist humor and this game and the act of doing favors for others. Yeah.
Speak on it. Yes.
Excited for that. Yeah. To come out later. No, this was just a silly little lad doing silly things in a British, or an English town. And yeah, I don't know. This is one of those games where I think if I know the person would have this kind of enjoy this kind of humor, I would recommend it, but I would not recommend this game to everyone.
I have a friend that is very Northern English, and I cannot wait to message them about it and see what their take is. I will buy it for them just to hear what their perspective is. And if we hear something interesting, I'll make sure that we get a voice recording or something that we can get of their take. So we'll see.
Yeah, but I think that's great because again, it's like you have a person specifically that even though maybe this game wasn't for you in certain spots or this game doesn't hit everyone, it's like you thought of a specific person who would like this game. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think so. That feels right. And to your point, we don't get many games that are just intentionally a comedy. I'm kind of hoping that Duck Detective game leans into that a bit. We played it.
It's out.
Oh, is it out?
Yeah.
Oh.
I have not finished it yet.
But I think to your point, doing a straight comedy is tough. And I feel since maybe Gex Enter the Gecko, I don't think I've played that was a 64 game. I don't think I've played a straight comedy in a very long time as a video game. So
yeah,
took a risk.
I think for folks who are interested in more, there's a game called Procession to Calvary that's very Monty Python-esque. That was quite fun when, from what I can remember. I played it years ago, but there are a few games. Most of them are from the UK, which is kind of interesting, that deal with humor specifically. I think Astrologaster is another one where you play an astrologist in Queen Elizabeth's court or something like that. I forget exactly what it is, but that's another comedic game that may strike your fancy if you're looking for more like this. But yeah, I think pretty solid one shot for sure.
A solid one shot. Did you enjoy the part where the game convinced you that it was over and then you could go back and sacrifice the entire world instead of the little lemon-headed guy, and it was a different one shot? Did you try that?
I seem to have missed that part. Dang
Interesting. Well, I'm really good at finding those little things.
I think that'll be it for this week. A little bit of housekeeping again. Just as another reminder, we are going to be off next week for the podcast because of XOXO, PAX West, and basically end of summer travel and work and all of that. So no podcast next week, but we'll be returning on September 3rd, which is the two Tuesdays from now, where we're starting the Indie Classic Night in the Woods. Very excited. This is going to be an interesting one because I have not played it. Angel hasn't played it, so that we're both going in totally fresh. So this one, I do know the themes get heavy. So once that newsletter goes out next week, that has all the prep for you, so you can pick up and start playing in time for the podcast drop. Know that we are going to be talking about coming of age, returning home, especially as a college student coming home, to your childhood home, mental illness, and hopefully some mental health, not just illness, and finding meaning in life. So, just lighthearted topics.
Just those little things.
Just the little things. So hopefully this was a nice little break before another longer game experience.
I'm also going to give a shout out to everyone that showed up for our hang this last week, the Discord hang where we got to talk about Citizen Sleeper and 1,000 Times Resist. One of the most
Firewatch.
Oh, sorry, that's what I meant. Firewatch.
We did talk about 1,000 Times Resist a little bit, but
that's right. We can't help it.
Yeah.
I just like, it was one of my favorite conversations we've had to date. So just want to give a shout out to the community for showing up. And if you are interested in joining, definitely check out the Geeks and Grounds calendar and join us for our end of month hangs. It's a lot of fun.
There isn't one this month, just as
correct.
a heads up, because of the travel. So
September.
We'll do it at the end of September. It's always the last Saturday of the month. So
join, get in the Discord. We'd love to chat with y'all. Thank you so much for joining us at Geeks and Grounds. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank goodness you're here. And may you all be little lads who get to slap your friends to make good things happen in their community.
Yep. Thank goodness you're here. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
The Geeks and Grounds podcast is produced and edited by me, Jenny Wyndham. The logo is designed by Lee Thomas, and the intro-outro music today is from Thank Goodness You're Here's original soundtrack. In addition to finding episodes across YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, you can find us on Instagram at Geeks and Grounds and find every link to the newsletter, Discord, and how to contact us via our website at geeksandgrounds.com. Thanks again for listening.